Good evening and welcome to tonight's program, Live with Tom Matte and Dan Sullivan. I'm Sean Hearn, Executive Director of the Babe Ruth Birthplace Foundation, and the Babe Ruth Museum is proud to be the official archive of the Baltimore Colts and presenting tonight's program. But the museum, like many other nonprofits in the region, is facing a challenging winter due to COVID-19. You can help by making a donation, becoming a member, visiting the museum over this winter, or purchasing one of our limited edition prints, Time Will Not Dim the Glory of Their Deeds, signed by Orioles Scotty McGregor and Baltimore Colt Jim O'Brien. Now, without further ado, let me introduce the MC for tonight's program, Mr. Michael Gibbons.
13-10 in overtime after a disputed Packers field goal at the end of regulation forced that overtime. Baltimore's defense was superb that day. They picked off Zeke Burkowski a couple of times, recovered a fumble for a touchdown. Matte ran the ball. He actually completed 5 of 12 passes for 32 yards, but he and his teammates did a lot of running that day. After the sudden death loss, which by the way was only the second sudden death game in NFL history to that point. Of course, we know what the first one was, the 58 championship. The Colts went on to play in what they called the Toilet Bowl, which was a runner-up bowl with the NFL's second best teams. And the Colts, under Tom Matte, whooped Dallas pretty badly in that game. So there's your setup. Now it's my great pleasure to introduce quarterback Tom Matte and an offensive lineman and his teammate for 11 years, Danny Sullivan. Gentlemen, welcome to our show, and thank you for doing this tonight.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
Okay. I mentioned just now that you guys played together for 11 years. Tom, you came in as first-round draft choice in 1961 with the Colts. Dan, a year later, you came in as a third-round draft choice, and you stayed together for your entire pro careers in Baltimore, spending 11 years together. And what a run you had. You were right in the middle of the Unitas era. And until the last year that you played, it was all about winning. Talk to us about those great years in the 60s.
We had a lot of fun together. It was a team effort. And, we had guys like Danny and we had a great offensive line to back us up and the receivers we had. And, of course, as the leader, you had John Unitas, and he was the mainstay for all of us, wasn't he, Sully?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, you couldn't find a better quarterback.
So, Dan, you took – I went back and looked up your stats and stuff, but you took over as a starter, it looked like in 1966. So from 62 to 65, you were the primary backup guy. In 65, what role were you playing?
Well, I was in, those were the days when we only had 33 football players, and they moved it up to 37, I think several years later. So, we kept about 7 offensive linemen, 5 starters and 2 backups. And I performed that backup role for a few years. But as a backup offensive lineman, I was a offensive tackle, offensive guard, and occasionally I was a center. So that's the history that you have, and you just had to do it because that was the style that was presented at that time with the number of personnel on the team. So it was great fun, and as Tom had mentioned, you couldn't. I'll give a shout out to one wonderful city, Baltimore. You couldn't find a better team to be drafted by and also playing by, because the fans were ecstatic, the teammates were ecstatic. It was a blessing. It was a blessing, really, for all of us.
Well, and in that era, maybe today a lot of the today's fans don't know, but that the Colts-Packers rivalry in the 60s was one of the great NFL rivalries of all time. You had Green Bay has the legendary Vince Lombardi. Baltimore has a future Hall of Fame coach, Don Shula. They've got Bart Starr. We've got Johnny Unitas. And from 1960 to 1970, the Colts won 103 games. and the Packers won 102 games. They were clearly the dominant forces of that decade. And so can you talk to us a little bit about the Colts-Packer rivalry?
Well, it was something that was very special. It was carried on through generations, I can tell you, because, Vince Lombardi was a great coach. And we had Don Shula, who was just coming into his own at that particular time. Weeb Eubank had been there just prior to that. So we had some great coaches, and Shula came in and, he took over. And with the leadership that we had a lot of older guys that Danny and I looked up to. Danny, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
But we did have a lot of fun with it, and it was a challenge beyond challenges for us to rise to the occasion, especially with me trying to play quarterback.
Well, and I'll tell you, when you get in 1965, the Colts had, they had been in the championship game in '64, right? And
right.
So we get into '65, and this rivalry is at its hottest, I think. It was just everybody wanted to see the Colts Packers. They beat you in the regular season in '65 2 times, including the second to last game of the year when Quazzo went down and Dave Robinson made an 87-yard interception return that pretty much put the icing on the cake. The Packers win the game 42-27, leaving you without a quarterback and a game and a half behind Green Bay, a half game behind Green Bay with 1 to play. So how did you guys feel after losing at Memorial Stadium and losing Quazzo? Did you think you could turn it around to make anything happen?
Well, that was the time, that game in Memorial Stadium against the Packers, that's the first time Tom came in as a instant quarterback, if you will, and he was the best available source because he did the quarterbacking job at Ohio State, and he's a very talented guy, not blowing steam up him, but he could play basketball very, very well. He could play ice hockey very well. His dad was a professional hockey player in the old Central League, so Tom had the ability to do all those type of things. It was just that it was new. He didn't have time to practice it. And he did a lot of exciting things in that game. I remember we ran up a couple, and then Tom looked over at Jimmy Orr and he said, Jimmy, can you beat Adley? Oh, no, can you, what do you want to run over there, And Jimmy said, I haven't beat Adley all day. What the hell do you want me to do, And then he looked at Raymond Berry, and Raymond says, Tom, we haven't practiced all week together. I didn't know where you throw the ball or anything like that. So we said all those things back in there. So I leaned over to Tom and I said very politely, Tom, it's only second down. You can't punt. What are you going to do now?
Oh, we did have some fun in the huddle and the whole ball of wax. And I said, first of all, I couldn't even hardly throw a spiral very well anyway, but I was sort of thrown into the same position at Ohio State when Woody Hayes finally came up to me. I was a running back and basically playing defense. And he says, I want you to play quarterback. I says, I got really small hands to grab the ball. And especially a college ball, it wasn't so bad. But when I got to the pros, the ball was wider and longer, and my hands were not big enough to wrap it around. Unitas had probably an inch and a half on me as far as fingers go, and he had so much more control over the ball. And I fumbled a couple snaps in practice, and it was, and the offensive line just looked at me and said, oh my God, we got to play with him. But we did have, let me tell you, the team rose to the occasion. We had good leadership. Don McCafferty was a great coach and really helped us immensely with shoes and the whole ball of wax. But, being the last man standing up, my offensive line had made a coup or something because they protected my buns really well. I can tell you that. I didn't get hit very many times.
So anyway, you go into the last week of the regular season. You guys played Los Angeles on a Saturday, December 18th. And Green Bay was playing on Sunday. So they would know what had happened. You win the game 20-17 over the Rams. What do you remember about that game?
Well,
Well,
I'll
I
tell you,
remember our offensive line did such a great job. We ran the ball very effectively, and I think that was the main thing that we were determined upon to do, and we did it. And we had a great offensive line to back me up, and they were protecting me like I was a little kid or something out there. But we had so much fun with it. Am I right, Danny?
oh yeah. Well, Tom was also the precursor of today's quarterback, who gets the ball and he fakes a handoff and he runs around the end with it, and they're all talented enough to do that. Well, Tom was doing that in that game against the Rams. Matter of fact, that game against the Rams, when the first series we took, he come out and I was the right guard, and he put his hands up my backside, and I said, "Tom, move over one more." The center is over here. So, but we had a few laughs about it. We joked and we were up. I remember later in the game, Tom, we were admiring the fans behind the goalpost when we were getting ready to score. So we were as loose as a goose, and probably part of the reason we were able to win that football game.
Well, and so you win the game, and now the pressure is on the Packers, really. And what did they're in San Francisco, and what do? They end up tying, and that tie tied your match
Our record, yeah.
10-3-1. And so off you go on December 26th to Lambeau Field to play the Packers. Shinnick, was it the first series, Green Bay series? Bart Starr, I have to say, Bart Starr was not in the game. Zeke Bretkowski, number 2 quarterback, but he was a legitimate NFL quarterback. He's in, and there was a fumble, and Shinnick picks it up and rambles 25 yards, and the Colts are winning 7-0. So how are you guys feeling at that moment?
Well, we're feeling pretty well because we had a lot of great respect for Green Bay. And Lombardi was a great coach, and this team, and we were there under a little bit of duress, especially with a 3rd-string quarterback or a 4th-string quarterback, basically playing quarterback. But this guy right here, my offensive line, they did such a great job protecting me because I was sort of the last man standing, and we didn't want to take any more chances.
Well,
that was Mike. That was also the start of the wristband. You haven't mentioned the wristband, but that Tom and Judy put that together, and Tom put the plays on that, and it was transcribed to Schuler, and then he and McCafferty were calling the plays a lot, and it was a godsend that we had that.
Let me ask you this: Did you use the wristband in the Los Angeles game?
Yes, we used them in all of them.
Yeah.
In fact, my wife wrote them out. She could print smaller than I could, so she wrote them all out. But it was a game plan we had. It was a little wristband that had a plastic thing in it. So, and you couldn't believe, hey, the Packers were trying to rip that thing off me, and they're saying, "You don't need that wristband," and yes, I do. I did.
So, people have been asking me this week, was that the first time a wristband was used in the NFL? I think it probably was, but I don't know that there's any hard evidence that proves that.
Yes, I'm pretty sure. In fact, I just got a verification from my wife, Judy. She said it was the first, and she was the one that did the printing on the sheet. Yeah. So that I could print it real small. She was a school teacher. So I put all those plays on. Remember, Danny, it was a little wristband that had a little plastic pocket. And you can't believe it. Hey, they were trying to rip it off my wrist when I was playing quarterback. They're just, you don't need this wristband. They're giving me a hard time about it.
Oh,
so it was funny, but we had some great camaraderie on that team and some great coaching. And we designed an offense and around what my offensive line could do to keep me alive out there, and they did one hell of a job.
Run. Well, and you're facing guys like Ray Nitschke and Herb Adderley, Willie Wood, Willie Davis, Dave Robinson on defense. My goodness gracious, and they were nasty. They were nasty guys under any circumstance. But now you got the wristband on, and they're giving you hell. So
And you take a look at Vince Lombardi, what he's done with, and he's in the Hall of Fame, deservedly so. He did a great job of coaching, but we had a lot of fun doing it. We scared the heck out of them anyway. But then we went on and played one more game after that against the Rams, wasn't it, Danny? And we kicked their butt, I think, pretty good.
right,
No,
that was Dallas, but
the
let
next
me
one
take-
was the Cowboys.
Let me take
Yeah,
you
the Cowboys.
to the fourth quarter of the Green Bay game, because that's what we're kind of talking about. And the Colts are winning by a score of 10-7. Clock's winding down. Green Bay gets in field goal range. It's under 2 minutes, and Don Chandler kicks a field goal. He kicks it high. It goes over one of the uprights, and the left upright, I guess, huh? And now that kick has been debated ever since, and I think that most people, if you look at the photographs, agree that it sailed wide, and it cost the Colts the game because he kicks the tying field goal, and then in overtime he kicks another field goal, and Green Bay wins 13-10. What did you think when that kick went toward the uprights? Did you think it was wide, or did you watch it?
I know it was wide. It was wide. It was over. It was a very high kick. And back in those days, the goalposts weren't as high as they were. That's one of the other rules that changed because of this game. And the goalposts were raised higher the following year by another 20 feet, wasn't it, Danny?
18 feet.
10, 20 feet higher because the
Wow.
football was outside that goalpost. There was no question about it. And they proved it every which way mathematically and everything. But of course, I don't think they wanted a third string quarterback going to the Super Bowl, I guess. Who knows?
But it is right. I remember we had an exhibit at Sports Legends. We built a goalpost, and we had the ball. We had the ball sailing outside of the goalpost, because it's a significant moment. It changed the way the NFL is. 18 feet raised. But then you go to Dallas. There's no, not to Dallas, but you play Dallas in the runner-up bowl, and there's no pressure. And you guys had a good time. You trounced them 35-3. And Matty, you had a hell of a game.
Well, we had a great game.
game.
Our running game was working so effectively; it was unbelievable. What a great job!
Well, no, before that game, Shula told us in a meeting that we're going to give Tom the opportunity to throw the passes today. So he's going to be felt, and he did a hell of a job. He threw nice passes, and I don't know how many you completed, but there wasn't a thing that we didn't think we could do to beat the Cowboys. So
it was a team effort. Let me say this, not only with the players, but with the coaches and with the fans that we had here in Baltimore. They were so tremendous to us and so, dedicated to us. And really, we had a lot of fun. It brought the team, didn't it, Danny? It really brought the team close together.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I'll tell you, the world's largest outdoor insane asylum, that was Memorial Stadium. And I went to my first game in 1957, home opener. And it was Unitas' first home opener as a starter. And when he was introduced, I had never heard a sound that big in my life. I mean, it was overwhelming, just the crowd reaction, and then the pony running around the field. So that was all good. I want, before the call started tonight, Dan and I were talking about the fact that you guys had played 11 years together. And talk a little bit about what that was like, and the off-field stuff. I mean, you play basketball for Colts off-season basketball team. Talk about your relationship over those years.
Go ahead, Dan.
Well, I think I'll just tell you one story that I think I alluded to it a little bit later. But in my first year, I came from the college all-star game. And, didn't have an automobile, didn't have anything, had very few friends other than I met Gino and I met Unitas and Artie Donovan in those days, who's still with us too. And I met them out in California where they took me out there for that last game. But anyways, after practice, I didn't have anything else to do. So I was just sitting on the side of the building up at Western Maryland College where we practiced. And this car pulls up and the windows goes down. And it was Gino Marchetti. And he said, "Hey, kid," he called everyone kid. He said, "Hey, kid, you drink beer?" And I says, "I sure do." He says, "Well, get in the car." So we get in the car. And, and here I'm a rookie, third round draft choice, no way of knowing if I'm going to make the team or not. And he doesn't care. He stops to say all those things. And then he gets me in the car and we went down. We had a beer as the rest of the crowd was in there. And that's the familiarity that the players on the Baltimore Colts had. So what happened years later was that Tom Matte and Dan Sullivan, who became the senior guys a little bit later on, we brought that message along to new guys. There was no hazing of rookies or anything of that nature. It was just they liked you because you could play football and you looked like a good person to them, So, and I think that is and then you mentioned, being introduced at Memorial Stadium with 70,000 people screaming and yelling. If you couldn't get up doing that, I don't know what was wrong with you then after that.
I'll tell you, it was great. The fans in Baltimore were very well educated about football. They knew who their heroes were. And we came into a time when Danny and I came in, it was a team that was so close together. We'd all practice, work hard, and all that kind of stuff. After practice, we may go out and have a beer together, but we'd always be talking football and asking how the families were doing and that kind of stuff. So it was a very close knit ball club, and that's what I think really kept us in being competitive. Don't you, Danny?
Oh, no question about it. Yeah.
Hey, we've been talking about Memorial Stadium a little bit. That was a stadium, a multi-purpose stadium, and the Orioles played there. And I always, remember going out there in October if the Colts, if the Orioles were going to be in the World Series or something, which happened, that they'd be playing a World Series game, and there would be the gridiron markings on the field.
Yeah.
And you guys practice there as well, right? So tell us what
we couldn't get it, Mike. We couldn't get in the stadium until the Orioles vacated it. We went to McDonough School out in Rice. Yeah.
Okay. But then when the Orioles season ended, you did practice at Memorial Stadium, right?
Right. We did. Yeah.
What was that field like to play on in December? Was it all dirt?
It was mud, is right. And it was tough to get your footing, and you really had to know what you're doing and where it was. And we sort of tried to move the ball around so that we get away from that infield and get to some grass. And it was tough to play on, don't you think, Danny? Because especially if it rained, it was like a mud bowl.
And then they put the grass down on the infield when the Orioles left, and just didn't have enough time to mesh and to get in there. So there would be patches of grass that would come up with your cleats and you'd slide a little bit and stuff like that. But it was still our stadium, and we loved playing there.
Absolutely. Yeah, it was great. Hey, I wanted to ask you about the last year that you were in Baltimore. 1972, you guys had never experienced a losing season. And 1972, the team finished 5-9. A lot of the older veteran guys got benched, including Johnny Unitas. The last home game, we played Buffalo, and Marty Domreyes was the quarterback. And he, in the fourth quarter, the Colts were up 28-7. A plane flies over Memorial Stadium saying, "Unitas, we stand." And Unitas, Domreyes pretends he's hurt. He limps off the field. Unitas comes in and throws a touchdown pass on the first snap, 67 yards to Hinton. Tell us about that game.
I can tell you one thing. I've got a picture that someone gave it to me, and I had it blown up. And it's a picture of John coming off the field after that pass. and I had someone put a plate on it, and it was the last pass that John Unitas ever threw was a Baltimore Colt, and it was for the touchdown and all that good stuff like that. So I have that standing as sitting on my basement wall, a finished basement I have downstairs, and I love every minute of it, looking at it, you know. And the one thing that a lot of people say, well, gee, that's great, you know. And I said, you don't see one thing there. I was actually crying when I was shaking John's hand because, you know, after playing 11 years with a guy of that caliber, and then what a wonderful person he was. I mean, you'd be hard pressed not to get some tears down in your eyes. And we all knew because of the change in administration, Joe Thomas, he didn't like any of the older guys. He wanted a clear house and do all that other stuff. And he even made the point to us that he was going to clear house at the end of the season. So
we all got dumped. I ended up out in San Diego. They traded me out to San Diego, but I had decided that 12 years as a running back was long enough. Danny, you were in the league for 11 years, and then you know, did you get that 12th year? I can't remember. Did you?
No, no, I was traded to Oakland.
Oakland.
It's an interesting story, Mike. It's in itself. Joe Thomas brought me down to Baltimore after the season, and he said to me, "What are your plans for next season?" And you know, I looked around and I said, "You know, I'm 33 or 34 years old. I said, I don't think I'm ready to retire." And I told Joe that. I said, I think I'm going to come back again and give it another go and see how good we can be, et cetera, et cetera. So I looked at him in the face, and I'll give him credit for being honest. I said to him, "What are your plans for me?" He says, "My plans don't include you." So he traded me to Oakland. He traded me to Oakland the very next day. So,
Tom, did Joe Thomas have a similar conversation with you?
Well, they got rid of me too. They traded me someplace. I can't remember where they went to.
I think.
But I had just,
John.
yeah. And
Chargers.
What?
Chargers.
To San Diego Chargers. Yeah, I got traded out to San Diego Chargers. Well, Unitas had gone out there, didn't he? And Unitas said, "Hey, you can get Matty for nothing. Bring him on out here. He'll teach these kids how to run pass patterns." So I had had enough though, and I hung it up. I had bleeding ulcers, so I had my dumb stomach cut out, and I went down to nothing. So I retired at the right time, but you know, it was such a great run in Baltimore, and Danny and I were just part of that. And we had such a camaraderie among the ball players and the wives, everybody. You know, it was like a party after every game. We'd all get together, go out to Artie Dunham's, who you remember, he had a little country club, and we'd all, after the games, we'd go out and have something to eat and end up at Artie's and then go over every play. And the wives would just sat there and said, and Judy would say, "I got to teach school tomorrow. Let's go." So we had to leave a little early. But we had such a great team here. And the friendship that we've had with all the players on the team was very special, I think. Don't you, Dan?
Oh, absolutely. The one thing, Mike, that whole season of '72, when Irsay was the owner and Joe Thomas was the general manager, and he fired Don McCafferty in the middle of the year. He took the blood and guts out of that team. He did, and I think he had a purposeful design to want to do that. But as we all know, the club struggled for several years after that until Burt Jones and that crowd came in, and then they brought some history back into the Baltimore Colts and stuff. But it was tough for all of us that played under a marvelous situation for 10 or 11 years. To see the dissemination of the ball club. It really was.
Absolutely. I mean, the Baltimore Colts, one of the great historic franchises in NFL history. And, you know, you guys, you didn't play in the '58 championship game, but which is, you know, the landmark game, I think, of NFL history. But you did play in the other significant Baltimore Colts game pertaining to the NFL history. And that was Super Bowl III. And, you know, a great upset, and the thing that really kind of put the AFL on par with the NFL. Talk about that game a little bit.
Go ahead, Dan.
Well, we had Mike. We had a lot of respect for the New York Jets. Not that we've seen them play or played against them or something of that nature. Namath had a pretty good history coming through, and we were a 17-point favorite, and I think justifiably so, coming from the National Football League and the way we ran through a lot of clubs to get to the Super Bowl. I mean, no one gave us any difficulty whatsoever. So that was tough to do it. But I remember having discussions with our defensive guys, and they praised Joe Namath very, very much so. They said, we're watching films of the games, and this guy can throw the football. I mean, he's got some pretty good receivers. A couple guys that were with the Colts before that and stuff like that. So it was a lot of people say you guys were overconfident. We weren't overconfident one iota. We went into that game thinking we're going to just take these guys apart and do that. And then a lot of things just went bad. Tom has the all-time record probably for 15 to 16 years after Super Bowls with a run from scrimmage about 64, 70 yards. And
84.
And he fumbled. And that was the start of a lot of our problems. Balls were hitting our receivers on the shoulder pads right up in the air and right in the hands of the Jet player. So it was bitter, and we haven't. I know I still haven't forgot about it. I haven't
either, Danny. I'm with you because we were just expected to walk away with this and step over these guys. But let me tell you one thing: that we were playing a good team, and it was a tough game, and we came up short on a stick. And you give credit where credit's due. They played a great ball game.
Yeah, they did. A couple of years later, you go back in Super Bowl V, a sloppy game, but you come away with the trophy, which, by the way, is on display at the Babe Ruth Museum. So it's Super Bowl V.
That's right.
It was a great year for you guys.
It was terrific. Yeah.
Well, we had a lot of fun, and it was really a sort of a comeback for us to be able to come back after that loss against the Jets. Just ate us alive. But I mean, we regrouped, and we had some great coaches, and they helped us get through that. And our team hung in together. It was a very, very, very close-knit ball club, right, Danny?
Oh, yeah. I mean, and we got some luck. In every game you get a little bit of luck, and I think some of the luck that we had going for us was that Landry started Craig Morton, and he had Roger Staubach sitting on the bench, and I think that as I look back on that game, it could have been an entirely different game if Roger Staubach had started, because he was playing some pretty good football in those days. But it was the first big game. I think that the other than Tom beating him in the runner-up game a couple of years before that, but they hadn't played too many big games, and I think they were a little overstruck with some of it. But we, it was sloppy, but we pulled it out.
Yeah.
Wonderful dramatic ending. Jimmy O'Brien, the rookie place kicker, and he puts the winning field goal through, and that was it. But my goodness, it was I don't know how many turnovers there were in that game, but there were lots.
You see him.
So, listen, I think Katie, we're gonna turn it over to the audience right now for questions. So, gentlemen,
sure.
If you stay tuned here for a sec, we'll get some of our viewers into the conversation.
I'm Matty, Mark Tadino from Eagles Nest, your old golfing partner.
Hey, how you doing, Mark? Good. From Eagles Nest, my boy, my country club.
This guy did the best Woody Hayes imitations. It was hilarious. He was fantastic. He was. Along with some others I can't divulge at this point. It's great to see you guys. Thanks again to the museum for doing this. This is just awesome. I'm very, very pleased. My question is this, you guys. COVID does a lot of things, but it makes you kind of sit there and go through YouTube wormholes. And mine's been going through the Colt teams of the 60s. And specifically from 64 to 68, you guys had a hell of a run. But for some reason, either in the title games in 64 or something else happened. You never quite got there, and it seemed like you would fade down the stretch. I think one year you were 9-1 and finished maybe 10-4, and another year you had an 8-1 start and finished 9-5. And I'm just wondering, was there something you guys? I mean, every year was something. Like in '66 was Johnny's fumble, in '65 the playoff game, in '67 you lose to the Rams when you're undefeated, which would be unheard of today. But was there something you guys could put your finger on and said, gee, I just wish we had done X, Y, or Z differently to kind of break the mold?
Good question.
Well, that's a good question. And, you look back over the years, and we had a few key injuries that there was some of the guys who were injured went out and played anyway. So it was sort of a tough deal for us and to swallow it. But I mean, we're playing other teams at the same kind of quality of athletes that we were. And we came up on the short end of the stick. Am I right, Danny?
Oh yeah, the talent was excellent in the NFL in those days. I mean, just to make a team in those days, it was very, very difficult. We did have some bad luck in a lot of those situational games that you talked about, but we gave it our best every time we were out there, and trust me, no one was more disappointed than we were as players.
Okay.
Appreciate it, guys. Good seeing you, Tom.
Thank you, Mark.
Good to see you. We got a call from Katie in there.
Nice jersey behind you, Mark.
What you do in the pandemic, you start finding stuff. If I showed you my bobblehead collection, I'd be embarrassed.
Okay. Have a nice day.
So Katie,
Yes.
okay, this is Wally Pinkard. I've got my Johnny Unitas helmet right here, and it's awesome. But I'll tell you one thing I've learned. It's signed by him. And a quick story, because I got to know Sandy. I bought this at an auction, and Sandy was in my office, and she came in and she said, "Where'd you get that helmet?" And I said, "Well, I got it at this place." And I pulled out the authentication sheet that showed John sitting at a table with tons of helmets. And she turned around and said, "I knew that son of a gun was doing something like that." And I've got an authentication thing and I've got the helmet. But my question is, because Mary Ann put the helmet behind me, my question, Tom, goes to, I think you still hold the record for the highest average rushing average in a playoff game in NFL history.
Yeah, I think that's still. I think it's still in there. Let me tell you, we had a great offensive line, and it had to be a great offensive line to have Unitas to have the records that he had in throwing the football. And we had a great camaraderie. On Friday we had our wonderful weigh-ins and had to go do this. And Friday afternoon we'd head out down to Morgan Millard or someplace like that, have a couple beers after practice and get ready for the game. But we were a very close-knit game with the family. Our families were all together all the time. So it was something very special that I think was going around the NFL at that particular time. I don't know if it does anymore, but boy, we had so much fun playing here, and the city and the people just rose to the occasion with us. Don't you think, Danny?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it doesn't come alone. To be able to do the things that we did as a team, it all starts with the coaching staff. Actually, it starts with the owner. And when Carol Rosenblum was outstanding as an owner, and then the coaching staff, Weeb Eubank, and then Don Shula, and then Don McCafferty coming in behind him, and even my coach, John Sandusky, for a couple of games before he did. It's all a conglomeration of a lot of good, hardworking guys that believe in themselves and believed in the people around them, that they could get the job done week in and week out. And then, as Tom has referenced, and I've referenced a couple times earlier, it certainly was never done without the fans of Baltimore. The fans of Baltimore were the best in the business, and they were great, and they were behind us. And when we were out having that beer that Tom talks about, the fans would come over and they'd say hello, never bother us, and then move on from there. So it's one happy family is what it really is.
And Danny, you're absolutely correct, because the friendships that we had here in Baltimore were and what the athletes put back into. And this goes not only for the football, but you take a look at baseball with Brooksy and Palmer and Boog and all those guys, and then you take a look at basketball then with that and how successful they were and how great the fans were here in Baltimore to us. We were very, very blessed, and we had leadership, we had great coaching, and that made it everybody have fun. The athletes put back.
So Tom, the last question I had, or last part of it, was on that day when you had that big rushing record. I think I remember, because I was a fan from early days, that Johnny Sample caught you on a long run, and you guys had a little. I never knew it was. So what happened? I know he caught you, but then you guys got into it.
Well, he was shooting his mouth off before the game about how they're going to kick our buns and all this kind of stuff, and we just he wasn't one of my favorite guys, I guess.
He gave cheap shots.
Yeah, he'd come in at the end of a play or something and give you a little cheap shot to the back of the head as you're walking back to the huddle. You know, I had no respect for him at all. But he made it. He was here with the Colts and then went up there and shot his big mouth off. So that's the way it goes. I'm getting the evil eye. It'd be good.
Well,
But you're right.
Was Johnny Sample, when he was well, you weren't a teammate of his, were you? So
No.
He left.
gone.
I think he left the year I came in. He came in, and then Sully came in the year after me. So
Yeah.
we've been together for a long time and great friends.
Okay. Katie, we have any other questions?
We sure do. Jeff, you're up next.
Yeah, thanks, Katie. I got to be careful here. I have family on the phone. Tom, I think somebody might be with you, so I got to be guarded here. But given you were,
Yes, Danny, we got Maureen Kilcullen here with us. Remember Maureen?
I do.
Yeah, she took care of all of us and all of our.
She's still taking care of
Yeah,
it.
she's still taking care of us. Judy piped up with that one. Yeah, we had, it was such a close-knit organization, and we had so much fun. And playing ball we didn't make the money these kids are today, I can tell you that. Boy, it's amazing. And Danny and I came in he came in the year after I did, but we had such camaraderie on this ball club. It was unbelievable. You know, and on Friday afternoon, we'd have that weigh-in, and Friday night was over. We'd always go and have a couple beers together and gain some.
You're repeating yourself.
I'm repeating myself. Okay. My wife's correcting me, Danny.
well,
Go ahead, Jeff.
I have to apologize. After Baltimore left, or the Colts left Baltimore, went to Indianapolis, I have become a Giants fan. So I got to thank you for lending Ernie to us for a few years. Made a big difference to the Giants. But my question is, based on your being drafted in 61 and starting, I guess, in 65, if that's correct, you had 3.5 years of grooming to become a quarterback in the NFL. Do you think they're pushing these kids too fast today?
I was sort of the last man standing. It was. I didn't want to play quarterback.
Well, Jeff, one of the things, let me take a shot at that a little bit, because
Thank you.
the kids coming in nowadays playing a much different brand of football than we ever played, and even sometimes better than what the pros do, because the college coaches are the brain trust of what's happening with all the different offenses and defenses within the league. So much more advanced than we were coming in to the league. It was just a different era and things like that. So a lot of these kids come in, and that's why they start as rookies now, because they're very talented, and they've been doing that. What's going to be required of them, they've been doing that 4 years in collegiate football. So they're much more attuned to what's happening with the system and how to do it. And then they all got a lot more time than we ever did. We all had to have jobs in the off season and stuff like that. You know, they play football all year round and do it. So I think a lot of that has to do with what they're getting in college. The offenses that they're dealing with, those offenses are the offenses you see in the pros now. You don't see a lot of drop back quarterbacks any longer in the NFL. You see a lot of these guys that Mahomes, for example, and several of those other guys. So it's much different than a lot of that facet of the game.
You got it, Dan. Woody Hayes would be famous now because he didn't want me to play quarterback because he knew I couldn't throw the ball that well. So it'd be all the rollouts one way, rollouts the other way, and reverses and all kinds of stuff to be able to keep that defense honest. So it was a challenge. We had so much fun with this, and it was enjoyable.
Well, we all, one of the things that I live up here in Massachusetts now, and because Tom's still in Baltimore, and we're best friends. I mean, I was down to his 80th birthday party in Baltimore. He came up here to my 80th birthday party, and guys like Rick Volk and a lot of the guys that we played with that still live in the Baltimore area. We're very close, and we got a network. We just lost one of our very good, dear friends, Ray Perkins, passed away today. So we've kept that camaraderie going, and it's lasted for all these years, and we love that. We love that.
And Jimmy Orr passed too.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, he just passed also. So it's sort of correct. But we do have. I see down here we have one of the Bracey family on the phone someplace.
John Bracey.
John Bracey. Can somebody pick that one up?
Sure. Well, John, if you want to unmute, and in the meantime, we actually have a write-in. So let me do that question real quick. Sonny asks, Ed Brown wasn't eligible for the postseason. Wasn't Bobby Boyd next up at QB if Tom got injured during the Packer game?
He was the next in standing, and he says, "Don't you get hurt." Yeah. He had played quarterback at Oklahoma, I believe, and but he came in as he was a great defensive back. But he was the last man standing if I went down. So we were really hurting at that time. And I'll tell you one thing: the team, Danny, and you could tell, the team really rose to the occasion. They really did.
Absolutely.
All right, John, you want to go ahead?
Katie?
Yeah. Hi.
Wow.
Hey, can you hear me?
Hold on.
We can hear you.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, just kind of nice to hear this nostalgia.
Bracey.
Remember the old,
John.
thinking about the old
He
West.
lives in Arizona, Tom.
Yeah. Where are you living, John?
John, are you
Down in
related to
Arizona?
Ordell?
Yeah, son.
You're one of his
Yes.
sons. Oh, wonderful.
Yeah.
You live in Arizona?
Well, I'm in Colorado.
Oh, Colorado. Okay.
Yeah,
Well, I thought you were out in Arizona.
I have to keep changing my address. But no, it's good to see
you.
Yeah, it was good to see you guys back in my dad's service. It was about a year or so ago.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's right.
He came in for our girls.
But I'll
Remember
just,
that, Dan?
Yeah.
just kind of talk about the camaraderie. Just
No idea.
the wives were so nice. They were just a real group of. I just remember, them coming over, and we'd have a party, and all the wives would come over, and they'd be off to one side, and all the guys would be over on the other side. And the guys would be off. Be sitting there,
Still is that way.
yeah, but you'd be smoking those cigars, drinking scotch, and I had I got to clean up the next day, so
Well, your father was one of Danny's and my best friends, and just to say, your mom was just great. I'll tell you,
I appreciate
unbelievable.
it. Yeah.
We had such a close knit family here in Baltimore, and everybody took a very active part in taking care of each other.
Yeah. If you ever want to talk about the after 72 and the days when Joe Thomas came in, I became a ball boy for the Colts back then. It was during the Howard Schnellenberger era, and then later on Ted Marchibroda. And just to watch Joe Thomas, he'd come to those practices and he'd stand on the sidelines. He'd be all dressed in black. He'd have his black sunglasses on, that black fedora. and you could just see the decline of the morale of the Colts at that time. You guys had been gone by then, but it's
Yeah.
probably 74, 75. It's just a little bit before Bert came in, but boy, he just brought the whole morale of that team straight down.
Well, he made an address in one of our meetings when he first took over, and he said, "I'm going to do for the Baltimore Colts what I did for the Miami Dolphins, and I'm going to make them one of the most winningest football teams in the league." And John, I got to tell you, and I think you referenced it, Mike, a little bit earlier, between 64 and I think 68 or 69, we were the most winningest team in all of the National Football League. So we all asked him a question at that time. You can't beat that record. That record is as solid as gold now. How are you going to beat that? But he had that arrogance and that position about himself that he was great, and you better understand what he's going to do.
Hey, well, you know what, Dan? I don't know if my brain is going to work correctly here, but I think from Unitas's first year, 1956, through 1971, the Baltimore Colts won more football games than any other team except one, and that was the Cleveland Browns. They tied the Browns for the winningest record for that whole span of time. So that's a remarkable record.
Cleveland didn't have good teams back then. We were living in Cleveland.
Yeah. And that was my hometown back then, Cleveland. So I had to root for them when we weren't playing for them. Playing against them anyway. Sort of like Danny up in New England.
Katie, do we have any other questions? We've got a couple minutes left here.
If anyone has a question, let me know. I don't have any more on my list.
Is that Katie, my daughter?
No, that's Katie who works for the museum.
Oh, okay.
All right. Well, with that said, listen, I want to thank Tom and Dan for participating in tonight's show, and for Maureen for coordinating this. We've enjoyed them. And I think in the extraordinary circumstance that we're in right now with COVID-19, this helps a little bit, and certainly it's great for our mission to tell the stories of our local sports teams and our local sports heroes. On the horizon, we are working on a series of special programs in conjunction with Babe Ruth's 125th birthday, which occurs next February 6th. So we're going to be looking to do some continued virtual programming between now and then, but certainly in early February, look for some very special programming to come our way. And thank all of you for participating this evening. Thanks to our audience. I know that we've got some special people on the call. Mr. Corsi and Bruce Laird, I believe, are on the call. And so thanks everybody for tuning in this evening. Have a great holiday and stay safe, be well, and we'll catch you next time. Have a great night.
All right.
Bye, Tom.
Thank you, Mike.
Bye,
Thank
guys.
you very
Thanks.
much. Thank you,
Hey,
Mike
Happy
and
New Year
Katie.
to everybody too, by the way.
Yeah. Happy New Year.
Happy holidays.